Isaac is Sarah's only son. He is the son that's designated by God to continue Abraham's legacy. Without Isaac, there will be no Jewish people, there will be no Bible, there will be no Judaism or the daughters of Judaism. Nothing would happen. And so the whole history of man's moral development and culture, man's higher calling and duty, all depend on the survival of Isaac. And now God is telling Abraham, go offer him as a burnt offering on a mountain that I'll show you. And Abraham does so. And a lot of people ask the question, we honor Abraham in our prayers. We mention the binding of Isaac every day. Jewish people do every day, every morning we mention it. The liturgy of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, when we ask God for a blessing for the year, we remind God of the scenario on Mount Moriah, how Abraham was willing to offer his only child. But some questions come up. Number one, there were people who sacrificed even more, and God didn't speak to them. We're about to, a month and a half, we'll be celebrating the miracle of Hanukkah. And one of the heroines of Hanukkah was a woman by the name of Hannah, whose 7 sons were sacrificed before God, who refused to bow down to an icon. There were others who did more, apparently, than Abraham. So why do we pray to God and mention Abraham's sacrifice? There were others who sacrificed as much or more. I'm going to digress. For those of you out there ready for the normal explanations, I'm going to give you one explanation that is found in the writings of one of the contemporary rabbis whom I shall disagree with. The explanation is that prophecy is a very difficult process. In the state of prophecy, your mind is almost taken over. You're overwhelmed by what you see. But what you see is symbolic, sometimes lacking clarity. And therefore the challenge that Abraham had was that Abraham's prophecy, he could have changed its meaning to mean something else. But because of the clarity and the purity of Abraham's soul, he did not change the meaning and understood it and persisted to do it. Does that sound right to you? The prophet could change the meaning, that it should mean something else or someone else. This flies in the face of what Maimonides says, that the prophet, during the time of prophecy, sees the vision, and immediately the meaning of the vision is engraved in his heart, and the prophet has to fulfill it. So there was no place for Abraham to make a mistake, and Abraham to deviate from God's intention. And it had nothing to do with the purity of Abraham's soul, as opposed to others. Anyone who had prophecy knew what the prophecy meant. That's a principle of Maimonides in the 8th chapter of Yesodei HaTorah, the Principles of Torah. Oh, by the way, the author of that is Rav Shach, the author of Avi Ezri in his first portion. I thought you might want to know that. At any rate, what was the great test of Abraham? Well, it wasn't that he didn't deviate from the prophecy's meaning. Rabbi Moses Sofer, the Chasam Sofer, says because Abraham was the first. He was the first who had to sacrifice his dearest children. And that's why this was so difficult. Afterwards, it became a nature among Jews that they were able to overcome their loves, their natural loves, in order to do what was right. The Alter Rebbe in Tanya says something else. Abraham didn't just do it. Abraham did it with enthusiasm. He did it immediately, without any hesitation. The alacrity and the enthusiasm that he did God's commandment, that was what was unusual. He did it right away and did it with enthusiasm. The Bible.What in Kedushas Levi, the holy Bible.What, Rabbi Levi Yitzchak says that when Abraham did the Akedah, he did so only because God wanted it. He lost all personal interest, self-interest, and he was totally devoted to the will of God. And in fact, when the angel told him to stop, he said, wait a second, let me at least do something, let me at least slice some of his neck. And he said, no. And he stopped only because God said so, not because he had a personal interest in saving his son's life. Now, these are three different levels of service to God, parallel to three levels of understanding the Torah: engage, enthuse, and empower. Engage. Don't be afraid of people who will stand in your way. Don't be afraid to be the first to do it. Do it, despite the difficulty. Enthuse. If you do something, do it with all your gut, do it with all your power, do it with your enthusiasm. Do it right away. Empower. Do it because it's right. Do it because you want to do it, not because somebody's forcing you. It becomes your thing. We can learn from that. Many of us, you and I, are called to help other people or to work for organizations. But the first thing is, don't be afraid to be the first on the block to do it. If it's important, just do it and don't be afraid what people will say. Second, if it's important, do it enthusiastically. Do it with energy. Don't do it like you're being forced and schlepped around. And third, make it your business. Just like when you're trying to make a sale or you're trying to raise some money or you're doing someone a service for which you'll get paid. So you do it because it's important to you. But somebody else's cause is not important, not as important. Make it as important. Make it your business. If we do something for someone else or for an organization, make this world better, it should be our thing, our will. We want to see that it gets done. And most of all, we have to have clarity and no doubts that it's important. No doubt that this is the higher calling.